see if you remember where we met.
I think it would have been when you came to Hawaii to put together the Maury Boogie team for Hawaii with Keith and Ben and myself.
Good memory. Because I was thinking, you're right. It was, was it 1977 or 78? Do you remember?
Yeah, I believe it was early 81, wasn't it?
Oh, 81. Oh, that's way into my, okay. Well, if it was 81, what happened was...
No, you're right. It was earlier than that, I believe.
Yeah.
It was summer of 80.
Okay, I thought it was even earlier than that, like 79-ish, 78-ish. But actually, I could go look at the couple of the articles. But anyway, the bottom line is he remembers and I remember. And it was like, okay, so if it was 80, let's say that's 20. That's 40 years ago. You know, that's a long time ago. So I remember them asking me to, I worked for Kransko. I went from Maury Boogie, and then Kransko bought out Tom. And I was working for Maury Boogie. And oh, I wish that wasn't echoing back. I'm sorry, everybody. Could someone type in if you can hear Pat okay? Just type in the chat room. Yes, you can hear Pat okay. I know you're hearing me because I'm on this, but anyway. Kransko asked me to go to Hawaii to pick 3 riders. What a job. Okay, fine, good. What a job. I mean, think about it for a moment. You get asked to, go to Hawaii to find some bodyboarders. Okay, that really, think about it for a minute. So Roger, what was his last name? He was the rep for boogie boards over in Hawaii. Roger
Kundal.
Roger Kundal calls us up. He was the rep for the shops over there and says, okay, Patty, I got a guy for you I want you to meet. And okay, so he introduces me. He takes me somewhere. I don't know if you guys met me at the airport or whatever, but that was when I met you from Roger Kundal, remember? And so that was 40 years ago. Pat's a little low. Okay. So anyway, I asked Pat, do you know any other riders in Hawaii that would be a Maury Boogie team rider, that would really be a good, representation of the company? And lo and behold, who did you go take me to?
Ben Stevenson.
Ben Severson, exactly. And I remember him being this little blonde, little grommet, he was only like about 14 years old. I mean, God, Pat, I'm ancient now, but I remember seeing Ben come out to the parking lot in the condos there in Hawaii Kai even. I remember that. So that was our team rider. You were our first team rider. Ben Severson was our second team rider. And then I went down. I think I was going to do an event at Point Panic. So I went down a couple days prior to check out the waves and everything. And there's this little ripper out there. And I went, oh, man, who's that kid? And so I went, I'll have to find out who that kid is. He might be a good candidate because he's dropped knee and, Well, he comes out of the water. Her mom come to pick him up. His mom and him come over to me. Are you the lady from Maury Boogie? Yeah. Oh, I'm entering the contest. You like come eat at my house tonight? Yeah. Heck yeah. Hawaiian food, no kidding. Portuguese food, whatever it was. Yeah. So anyway, that's how I met Keith Suzuki. And so Keith became our third team rider, if you remember. And for those of you that are watching, I don't know when you were born, how far you go back, but that was 80. Let's just say 1980. So that was 40 years ago. So I'm sure a lot of the riders have heard about Keith Suzuki, Pat Caldwell, and Ben Severson, because they are legends, and they will be on this everything about everything bodyboarding that I'm doing. Okay, so you were on the first team. So tell me a little bit about the 70s in your life. Do you remember any part of the 70s?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the bodyboard was invented in the early 70s, and I think I remember getting my first boogie board at the age of 12, 74. I'd already been surfing for about 4 years by then, but where I grew up, near Sandy's and McAfee was probably some of the best body surfing and boogie boarding places on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
So consistent.
Yep.
So that's basically what I did. I entered some contests at Sandy Beach and some other surfing contests in town. Got my competitive pieces flowing and just going up in the ocean and enjoying the surf.
Awesome. So you were already out there, Sandy's area. So all right. So we get to the 70s. So tell me about your stoke. I mean, were you body surfer or bodyboarder? I mean, how did you get into bodyboarding?
I just kind of did all of it, all at once. I was surfing and body surfing and bodyboarding, and as the boards got better through the 70s, I started to phase more into the boogie board world, and of course back then there were just boogies. There
right.
weren't any other brands out there really.
Right.
There were some odd and end boards. The pipe cleaner was one board I remember. Turbo was, I think, Captain Turbo was starting to
oh yeah,
make some boards in town with the hard plastic bottoms.
Mm-hmm.
But up until through the 70s, there was just boogie boarding, and so it was just, I don't know, it was a fun thing to do, and my body build, being long and lanky, was just perfect for body surfing, and then having a boogie board underneath me was just that much better. So it was just a natural progression.
Yeah. So now you get through the 70s. Did you compete at that Haleiwa contest that I came out on, or was that after you or before you?
I didn't come out to that one. I remember that was with Joey Gibbs and Bobby Daybad.
Yeah.
And Jacqueline Holmes.
Tom actually came over for that too. Yeah.
Tony Prince too, I think.
Yeah, Tony Prince, right. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I just thought maybe you might have been at that. Okay, so now let's get into the 80s. So now, are you still considered the person that invented the El Rolo, or is that somebody else?
Yeah, I think, as much as I hear about it now, I think I'm still the one that's been known to be the one who started the El Rolo.
Okay,
and
cool.
Yep.
So Jim Waxer's got a bunch of good questions here. Well, you were a lifeguard too, right?
Yeah, I didn't start lifeguarding until 93.
Okay, we'll get into the 90s in a minute then. Okay, and then could he do all the tricks as well as going right?
Oh, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, the Rolos and the aerials and everything else that we were doing in the 80s and 90s.
Uh-huh. And then what was the most sketchy situation in the water while bodyboarding or being a lifeguard that you had?
I would have to say probably riding Mavericks back in the late 90s.
Ooh.
Probably one of the heaviest. So Alistair Taylor and I, we followed a swell across the North Pacific, and I was still living in California then.
Mm-hmm.
And Alistair was in town. He was still living there as well. And we drove up and got 2 days in a row at Mavericks. It was maxed out.
Oh, wow. How big was it?
It was in that 35 to...
Oh. Okay,
it was like breaking outside of the main break.
Wow.
Most of the guys were just towing in. There were only about 3 or 4 of us paddling.
Uh-huh.
In the lineup. That's how big and heavy it was.
Oh my gosh.
And it was scary. There's a lot of south wind cross chop, and it wasn't perfect conditions. So.
Wow. Well, you can say you did it, and that's a great answer to his question too, because that sounds like, I mean, it came right to your brain the minute, the minute.
There were no rescue skis. This was prior to rescue skis being out there during the big swells. There were no boats.
Mm-hmm.
It was It was gloomy. It was windy. There were 3 or 4 of us out there.
Mm.
Might have been one guy from a boat taking pictures.
Uh-huh.
And that was it. One guy towing in.
Wow.
One guy from Santa Cruz, and please. And
Wow.
that was the heaviest water I've ever had to deal with.
Wow. Okay, one more question, and then we'll go on to the 90s. It says, if you could only bodyboard one spot the rest of your life, what spot would that be? That's a good question.
Ooh, that is a great question.
Yeah.
I guess it would be uncrowded pipelines, but that'll never happen. But I would have to say my home break here at Sandy Beach. There's just
really? Mm-hmm.
There's always, it's so consistent. So
yeah.
I think that would be the one place.
Well, that's a good answer. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good answer.
Oh, yeah, totally better. Okay.
I'm trying to get some of these questions answered here. Okay, so good. All right, so my notes, I'm going to take you through the 80s now. So we get up to the 80s, and you were in some of the Maury Boogie pipe contests, weren't you? In the 80s?
Yeah, I was. I missed the first one because I had finals in college. So I couldn't miss my finals. That would have been a waste of a semester if I would have showed up for the pipe event in 82, first one. There was the North Shore Surecraft event that happened in 1980 at Pipeline. So that was actually the first real strictly bodyboard contest at Pipeline, with prize money. And then in 82, the first Maury one I missed because of finals. And then 83, Pipeline never got good during the waiting period. It ended up being at Haleiwa. And I got second in 83. I got second in 84. So from then on, I was in each pipe event through 1996.
Wow. You competed out, didn't you? Wow. Well, that's awesome. So, I have so many fun memories of as we're getting into now we're really getting into the bodyboarding thing. The early days were just something that if you weren't there, it was so magical and so historical and so everything. And we can remember it, which is really, really awesome. But when we get into the 90s, and that's, again, 30 years ago, I remember you now coming up and living in San Clemente, remember, in that one place over there by Trestles. And you were getting into running. I was getting into running. And actually, I'd been into running, but Glarmy and I laughed about this the other night, too, because there's something about that sport because it's an individual sport, kind of like bodyboarding, and you can just go as far as you want, or you can just, go as slow as you want, whatever. But I remember when you and I would go out on runs, it was always like, okay, well, we can kind of just start running and talk a little bit as we're going. But then the gazelle would take off. And I always kind of thought of you as like my rabbit. Like if I could just catch Pat, I would be really doing good. I will never, Pat, forget that as long as I live. I think we even ran, we're going to get into the BIM nights too, but I think we even ran on some BIM nights before BIM night, didn't we? Do you remember when you come down to Oceanside? I remember running Oceanside with you.
Yeah, it could have been. Boy, that's really trying to jog my memory.
No.
It's been almost 30 years.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, I do remember it because I remember you out there a little bit, and me always trying to catch you, and there's no way. But in the 90s, you and Jay and Regina, we talked about this in the video I did on BIM. We talked about our BIM nights, and here you are on the cover of Schlitterbaum. And could I just read something real quick, and then I want you to tell us about that event out there. But Pat was one of the people that put in he's a really good writer, and he put in a lot of the editorial and was kind of like the king of editorial of BIM. But here's what you said on your little notes to the people that read this. From PC, The summer of 92 will go down in history with the first Flow Rider event taking place. The Flow Rider will open up inland markets on bodyboarding. I believe it'll be a great training tool and retreat for surf-starved bodyboarders worldwide. Other historical events, 17-year-old grommet Brian Weiss won the Bud Pro tournament. Do you remember that? Do you remember when Brian Weiss won it? Okay, and then Brian Press made his first final pro heat and won the Oceanside PSAA event. Do you remember that?
Vaguely, yeah.
Yeah, they were pretty historical because these are two young, kind of pups in the sport doing pretty good in the pro arena. And here's what I really liked what you said. And if it was today, it would be beautiful. The youth of bodyboarding are bright, aggressive, and exciting. They have nothing to lose, is what Brian Weiss said after winning in Imperial Beach. I believe this ushers in a new era. The youth need guidance. We need to treat these youngsters with respect, whether it be by the sponsors or by the older riders. And that was in 1992. And that really holds true today, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And you can see that with what Ben Severson and myself and Keith Scott are doing here in Hawaii to keep the sport alive, along with Chris Burkhardt and Jeff Hubbard.
Nice.
On Kauai and also on Oahu, by putting on bodyboard events in the islands here.
Do me a favor, press the volume on your computer. That's what I'm picking up.
A little technical there.
Yeah, it does hold true today, for sure.
Yeah, and we just got to get those young, what do you call it, grommets out where, we knew who Brian Weiss was and he was young, and Brian Press. That needs to start over. We talk about that all the time, but that was something in the 90s that I'll never forget. You being involved with BIM, picking some of the most insane covers. This one, I was telling the people on the bodyboarding video that I did that even though you ended up in the cover, that Russell Hoover shot deserved. I mean, it was picked by the whole group of people that were on the BIM night, that we would all get together. Well, you didn't say, hey, and so I think that was pretty cool. And then the other one that you were on, I don't have that copy, but I know you were on another cover. Do you remember that cover?
Yeah, I've got it floating around here somewhere.
Yeah, cover here, cover there. Yeah. The people kill to be on a cover. Yeah, it's around here somewhere. Anyway. So that was so much fun during the BIM nights. And then as BIM got going and then we went into the BIA, now remember, we're still in the 90s. Pat now gets very involved. He's living in California, and you started coming to the BIA judging arena. Did you compete or just judge?
I just judged.
You just judged, Yeah. That's
Yeah,
what I thought. Yeah.
Judging.
Yeah. And we were real adamant about having the best judges, pros, Manny and Guillermo, remember, and Chris Granoni and everybody, that when you paid the money to be in a BIA event, you were going to get judged by a real professional staff. And I'll never forget you for that, Pat. You came so professionally to help these kids move along in their competitive careers. And so that was the 90s. Now you have to tell us what happened after that. We've got like 25 years in there. What happened? Where are you? What happened during that time?
I started lifeguarding,
Mm-hmm.
and of course, still bodyboarding at the same time. But lifeguarding in California, as you may know, is pretty seasonal. So I would spend my winters in Hawaii on the North Shore through the 90s and early 2000s. And then my summer seasons and swing seasons lifeguarding in California. And then in 2000, I tried out for California State Parks permanent lifeguard and got into that.
Oh, that's right.
I'm familiar with California State Park lifeguards. They're all permanent peace officers. They're police officers. They carry a badge and a gun and rest powers in California. So I did that through the early 2000s into 2012 before finally moving home to Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
You know, all the while, even during that time, kind of getting back to judging too, it was very important to me that because of what happened to me in the 80s and early 90s, being judged poorly,
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be the best judge that I could be. And so when I started judging, I brought the same focus and attention to detail and fairness that I do when I'm lifeguarding. It takes a lot of concentration to judge as it does in lifeguarding. So I saw there were some parallels there. And so, of course, I was brought under the wing of Midget Smith, who was my sensei, so to speak. He taught me all the ropes and judging, and I judged surfing events through the late 90s before becoming a police officer for state parks.
Mm-hmm.
And now I picked it right back up in 2011, coming back to Pipeline, and judging there, and then working with Ben and Mike Stewart, of course, and Hubbard and Chris Burkhart and everybody, in judging here in Hawaii. So it's kind of come full circle.
Yeah, that is so cool. That is really cool. I'm just, as you're talking, I'm just putting some pictures of you up in the back here. I don't know if anyone can see them. Well, that's certainly, you get back to Hawaii, and then I know you were approached in the last couple of years by Custom X. You know, I know everything went vintage. I'm talking vintage clothes, vintage this, vintage that, vintage cars. So yeah, it would make sense that vintage bodyboarding and the interest in all of the legends that I'm lining up are amazing. People are really interested in hearing some of this stuff. And so the vintage bodyboard, I think, was probably one of the most creative, genius things that came out, don't you think, as far as resurrecting some of the models like yours, and other writers have done that too?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, that there's been quite a, you know, we're at that point now in history. The bodyboard is just about 50 years old.
Mm-hmm.
The boogie board is about 50 years old now.
Mm-hmm.
That people would be interested in collecting or resurrecting the old models from 20, 30, even 40 years ago, and then also collecting the old models and trading and selling. So it's been quite interesting, and it has been an older crowd, meaning, you know, a lot of people over the age of 30, 35 who are interested in the collecting of old boards and what have you. But what they're doing down in Australia too is having these vintage type bodyboard contests where you have to ride old boards.
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm.
Which has been a lot of fun to
see.
Maybe one day we can get that going here in Hawaii as well.
Yeah.
But it's been really good for the sport, and being that it is an older crowd collecting and getting involved in bodyboards, collecting bodyboards and collecting old models and resurrecting new models.
Mm-hmm.
Their kids and grandkids are tagging along and getting interested in the sport
as
well.
Yeah.
It's bringing up a new generation of kids being interested in the boogie board, and hopefully getting them involved in the sport and creating more marketing and business opportunities for the sport to grow.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. And I think it's so exciting. It really is that, you know, that this whole resurgence is happening. So we have the resurgence of an interest of boards. And I mean, I definitely want to get like Jordan Stollard on one day, because he's the one I see that has the biggest, I don't know if there's anyone has a bigger collection than him, but it would be so interesting to interview him and see some of the stuff he's collected. It's amazing.
Yeah, definitely. I would say he has probably one of the best diverse collections.
Yeah, and then
I've been through his collection.
Have you?
Probably got, you know, a couple hundred boards.
Isn't that awesome? Yeah, I'd love to see that. Okay, so we get through BIM, we get through BIA, we get through yours. Now tell us a little bit about your board. I know a lot of people asked about your new Pat Caldwell model. What went into that, and what, all the things that you were instrumental in having done.
Yeah, so I guess it was back in, I want to say 2017 is when when the idea, thanks to Jacob Vanderbilt and Debbie Caldwell at Custom X, and all the hard work from PMA, Pete and I over there, to come out with an older board model, kind of resurrecting the old Pat Caldwell model, the old blue and white split decks and the old logos and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I put a couple of little twists on it to make it a little modern.
Oh, did you?
Yep, different cores and finger grips and things like that. But what was really interesting is late last year we decided to move forward with a vision that I had back in the early 80s that was never able to be replicated because people that I wrote for just was like, I was writing for Maury and they didn't want to do something like that. They just kind of laughed and said that's too hard. But it was time, and the timing was perfect that the old step rail that I had shaped in my garage back in 1980.
Oh, wow.
was a board that worked so great. And now with the materials and the technology that we have now and the expertise that Pete and I at Custom X had to make this realization come true, and the tooling that they had to actually redo to make this happen, we've been able to actually replicate the step rail board, the old Scott template, and the new steps, and it built me a prototype, and I wrote it in early March for the first time, and was just blown away.
Really?
It works it's just amazing. It's been difficult as much video and pictures and things have gone up showing this board. It's been really difficult for people to understand what they're looking at. They say, "Oh, is that a stinger?"
Oh, really?
No, it's not a stinger. No, the template is not broken because of these steps. But people are starting now to get their boards from the first 50, and they're starting to ride them. And they're starting to understand the concept behind the step and what it does. And I think it's going to be revolutionary. I think we're going to see variations of this with a lot of other top bodyboard companies as well out on the market, kind of using my step rail vision as something that they're maybe incorporating in their rails later on down the line.
Yeah, that's really exciting. What would you say would you say that you were the first person to come up with the vintage board? Because I know there's been others. Are you the one that's pretty much started that whole thing? You and Deb?
Yeah, I believe so, actually. And again, it was all because of vintage bodyboard collectors, and then
really,
got to give a lot of credit to Jacob Vanderbilt too, because it was his idea to come out with the old Pat Caldwell model. And yeah, so I believe it was the first attempt to replicate an old model.
Yeah.
Like a vintage model.
Yeah. That was the first one I heard about, and I just thought it was like really kind of neat. I was going to see if I could bring up one that you might want to explain, because I think the younger writers and a lot of the ones that are totally into it, I think it's a different sport now. Just based on what I saw at the November Ocean Beach event, it had a different look than back in the day, when everyone was, blonde and, had fluorescent shorts on and that type of thing. It has a different look, and it's a little bit older rider. I think maybe 29 to 40. And that whole beach was a collection of that. So these riders are really into this stuff. They're into all the stuff that you're putting on the, putting into your board. So that's why I think there's a huge interest. Debbie Caldwell says it's been a fun project working on Pat's step rail. There you go. Because that's going to probably go down in some sort of historical thing, and tell me some of the stuff that the feedback people are saying about the step. I mean, good, bad, or otherwise. What is some of the stuff you hear?
I've seen everything from Chinese junk to I can't wait to get in the water, and the board has got good. It's got good. It got me through sections, and it's given me projection through the surf. But the feedback is just starting to trickle in. So I mean, I think as this COVID-19 kind of settles down and start getting back in the water with their boards and get it into some good surf, the feedback is really going to come in pretty well.
Yeah.
But I think when there was some negative feedback when it first came out, like, this looks like something I've seen before, and there really hasn't been. I know that Ben Stevenson built a step rail board after seeing mine, and he tried it out and he loved it. So I'm just waiting for that feedback to come back. I know that what I've experienced, and I've ridden some pretty big surf and some good surf, that it's fast, it's responsive, it's a next step, really. It kind of breaks us out of thinking that all boogie boards have to have a continuous rail through the top and the bottom.
Yeah, so interesting.
I'm hoping people start, thinking outside the box and start playing with the boogie rail. I know, Ben's done it with making round rails. There's been some concave rails that JP's done early on with Scott and with Custom X. So, I mean, but we need to move forward, and this is hopefully one of those things that gets people thinking about, and gets people's creative juices going.
Yeah. That's Jordan Stallard's comment there. It says, my feedback, I love holding it in the living room while waiting for uncrowded waves. Thank you, Jordan. This particular program won't allow your name to come up unless you want it to, which I think is really good. In case you say something like, not that good or that derogatory. So you're protected here. But over here, I can see who's commenting, and I think Jordan would want you to know that. And that was Deb Caldwell, the Queen of the Knife, saying it was a fun project working on Pat's step rail. So keep your comments coming, because it's definitely time to do it. And we were going to have an actual call in and ask Pat questions. But since he's on the phone, we're going to have you type them in. And I know that there are hundreds of things you could ask him. While we're waiting for some questions to come through, Pat, I want to just kind of go back over. Was there anything from the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, those early days that you would like to say anything about? Those first, believe it or not, 30 years? Scary.
First 30 years that were 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I just remember one size. And when I started boogie boarding, the thing came to practically to my neck.
Uh-huh.
And I had to learn how to use it that way. But I just remember watching Jack Lindholm at Sandy's, and he was the king. And
Oh, yeah.
Whether he was prone riding or helping the jack stance.
Uh-huh.
He was the king. He was so far leaps and bounds better than everybody else on the boogie board.
I know.
And he was my idol, and he was somebody I really looked up to. And it gets me kind of choked up a little bit thinking about it.
I know.
So special in this whole history.
He is
of boogie boarding, and so he was really important to me, and somebody I really looked up to. And, even going into the 80s and stuff like that, it was really exciting time for the sport. Doing the jamborees that you put on in Southern California. I remember every summer coming back through the early 80s and working with you on the beaches with Tony Prince and Roger Waller and Scott Evans and the whole gang. Was just fantastic memories.
Yep.
I remember after a long day at the beach with you and the boys and the gals, we would all go out to dinner afterwards and just kind of sit with our sunburn and just talk about how the day went and just be so stoked about how everything's going and what we did to get kids out there on the boogie board.
Yeah, get them stoked. Yeah.
Boards they never used before. What a special time that
it was. And for those of the younger people that are listening, because I don't know how old you are, Pat, but I'm 74, so I was still kind of even old when we started, so, but well, not old. I don't think 30's old, but older than 12, but my memories, even I haven't lost, are the most unbelievable, fantastic. I think I can remember every single one of those dinners that you're talking about. They were just so fun. And we had no clue, and I'm sure you'll agree with me on this one, that we were actually creating history. We had no clue. We were just out there enjoying the sun and the boogie boards and, just, hey, we didn't know we were going to actually live this long either.
That's right. Yeah, I'll be 58 next week.
So 58. I was wondering, wow. Well, that's amazing that you're still out there, charging on your own boards and this, that, and the other. That's great. Well, we got some questions coming in. I knew that would happen. So the first one is from Gino. Thank you for your dedication and stewardship of bodyboarding over the decades. Yeah, ring that home there, Gino, the decades. The question is, when you revisit, it's up on the thing here, when you revisit surf spots like Pipeline and Sandy Beach, for example, have they changed, or must you have so many memories of these places? Or you must have so many memories of these places. So I guess the question is, have they changed, Pipe and Sandy's and all that, or are they still pretty much the same?
Pipeline is just become, it was crowded back in the late 70s and early 80s when I first started going, but nowadays it's really crazy and it's dangerous because there are so many people out there, and so Pipeline has changed. The wave hasn't, but the level of riding at Pipeline from surfers to bodyboarders has gone through the roof, and everyone knows where to sit now. Everyone's got the lineup. So it's extremely competitive, and it's almost become untouchable for myself to go out there and enjoy myself, because it kind of pushes my old body to do things that it shouldn't be doing.
58,
I'll end up pile driving the rocks or something. Sandy's has changed in a way that it's just become, for me, as I got older, it's become more of, I'm the top dog now. not the best rider, but I'm in regards to if I want a wave, I can get it.
Mm-hmm.
Back when I started there in the 70s, 80s, it was almost impossible to get a really good wave because there were so many. The surfer crowd on the reefs was just so competitive, and it was really difficult to get anything I wanted to. But I mean, the only thing that really has changed in Sandy's is it's a little more crowded. There's a little less sand. The sandbars aren't quite as good. But other than that, Sandy's hasn't changed much at all, except for there's a few more boogie boarders and a few less body surfers.
Yeah. Okay, next question. Richard Potta. Hi, Richard. What's after the step rail, Pat?
Well, I don't know.
Okay. Just
I've had some ideas, but I would rather not say them over the
that's proprietary right now. Yeah.
I do have some ideas.
Cool. Joe Evans. Hey, Joe. Orange Sunkissed will never taste the same again. And that's kind of like not an inside, but it's for those of you that are around a while. We used to do Sunkissed sponsored us, and we had everybody in orange shirts. We had orange banners. We had Joey Gibbs out there on an orange Sunkissed windboard, and it was all beat Sunkissed. So Joe's right. Orange Sunkissed will never. Is it still around? I didn't even know if it was still around. What do you think? What do you think about those Sunkissed days, Pat?
Yeah. No, there's a lot of orange soda going on around the beach too. That was fun.
It was.
I liked when Maury incorporated some of their boards with the Sunkissed logos on them. That was kind of fun.
It was. That's a good one, Joe. Okay, here's a good one too. Does Matt? Does the step rail work better in smaller or bigger waves?
I'm still working on it. When I developed it back in '83, I immediately took it out to the wedge in some pretty big surf. And noticed how well the board turned and knifed through the water, and that was just a big, nice big smooth surface at some good sized wedge. So it works good at high speeds. It works good at slower speeds. So I've had success both in smaller and bigger waves.
Oh, good. Here's another one. We got a question here. What is it like working with PMA, and how different from the previous shapers? Oh, you're not going to say anything about PMA over the video.
No, PMA, he gets it. He understands. All the shapers that I've worked with have been fantastic, but PMA, he's a rider as well, and shapers were too. But he understands it. He gets it, and it's been really fun and easy to work with Pete on these shapes, getting them out. Yeah, he's really dedicated for sure. Just a quick one here. I don't think it's a question, but Steve says Sunkissed, Juicy Fruit Gum, and the Moribug commercials were always fun to see. They were back in the day. You don't see those kind of commercials. Yeah, they were big time. The
no kidding.
Gum commercials went worldwide.
I know.
Made in Europe, but they did air in the United States and South America. So, Juicy Fruit really put boogie boarding on the map as well.
No kidding.
Was in the mid '80s when that commercial came out.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about eras, but Joey's asking, does Pat have a favorite era and why? Do you have anything like, that was my absolute favorite?
I might be partial, but I think the '80s were probably the heyday of the sport of boogie boarding. When it comes to Patty, what you started in the late '70s with Maury being the promotions manager and traveling to the East Coast and doing all the jamborees, and then the first professional contest coming about in the late in '79, and then in Hawaii in '80 through the '80s. It really emerged as not just a pool toy or a whitewater riding wave vehicle. It turned into a wave riding vehicle that really took wave surfing to another level. And so '80s was the time when it all kind of came together. It materialized and busted out worldwide, and you can see what happened to the sport in Australia and Brazil back in the early to mid '80s, and it has really shaped where we're at now. And so I'd say the '80s my favorite era.
Yeah.
Given the materials came from night and day.
Oh yeah.
And
I think you guys were it's the way I was thinking about, like when I was going to do the Roger and Scott, and then Tony and Joe they're the OGs, they're the '70s original guys, but then it blows up, and now the golden era, which is the next gen, would be like you, Ben, JP, Mike, all the blonde, all you guys. So I could see where, it really blew up too. So Mary Lee had the full, contest going everywhere, and it just went huge. So I can see where that would be a really favorite time. Great question. Jim says, let's see if I can get this up here. Jim says, I missed part of the interview, so I'm sorry that if it was covered. Yeah, we did answer some of your questions already. They're back in the first part of the interview. But what is your favorite spot in California?
Ooh.
Yeah.
There were a lot of spots in California.
I know. That's a good question.
Some of them I don't want to let out, but there are some spots in San Diego County.
Yeah, you could say that.
And then
Orange County.
The places that I trained at, that's a no-brainer. In the early PSAA days, the waves were just grovelly mess, mushy mess.
Yeah.
But I did go to 40th Street in Newport a lot because
did you?
In those early PSAA days, I lived in Irvine, so 40th was my.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So 40th Street in Newport was a great wave to train at, whether it was good or if it was small and mushy. It was just a great place. But for pipeline, if I could get out to the wedge and get some good decent waves at the wedge, it was a good place to train for.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. What does he say? Or competitions that thought was odd and you thought really helped you? Yeah, you answered that one. Let's see. Here's another one. Some good questions coming through here. Thanks for your time, Pat, and sharing it with us. Have you been at Kelly Slater's wave pool?
I have not been to Kelly's wave. I hope to one day. We'll see. It looks like a lot of fun. I saw Mike Stewart's video from there. Looks like he got some fantastic little waves. I think wave pools are, like I said, back in the Bin magazine, back in the early '90s, with the Flow Rider. I think wave pools are the future, and there are the plunger pool in Queensland, and then the one in Melbourne. They're great bodyboard waves. And it's the same wave over and over and over, so it shows people's ability to ride the waves, and there's a benchmark to go off of. So I think wave pools are the future.
Well, it certainly would have made sense getting into the Olympics that way. There's something kind of got disjointed because that's where we that's not a good answer, but where we could have been easily in the Olympics with a controlled wave like that, easy to judge and have but something happened, so I don't know. We got some really good questions here. Some of them, as a matter of time.
Jim's second tier one was it. I tried in tow bodyboarding. I have tried it once.
Oh yeah.
And my experience with tow and bodyboarding is it takes the fear out of riding big waves.
Really?
You can get out of situations. You can get into the wave without having to worry about being in the right spot, and getting cleaned up. So tow and bodyboarding is pretty awesome. And what they're doing in some of those giant slabs in Australia and other places around the world is phenomenal. And it really does. It's amazing. It takes the fear out of riding giant waves. It just takes the fear and throws it out the window. It makes riding waves just like the easiest thing ever. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. Let me see here. I've got so many of them coming down the pipe here.
Go ahead.
The early riders emulated the style of riding like Tom designed it to do. You were the most stylish rider I've ever seen. How do you feel about your current style of riding?
Well, I think it's like a painter. You
That's from Jack.
Style, and you can it kind of it mutates a bit over the years, but you don't lose that style. It's like a painter. You have a certain way of doing things on the wave face. That the wave face is your canvas, and it was always it was a way for me to express myself, and I just really enjoy making it look effortless and painting just smooth strokes and working the wave faces. It's a lost art,
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, that was a really nice comment too. That one question here is, what was do you have a memorable contest moment?
Yeah, I think it was in September '84 when I won the Pro-Am contest in Oceanside, California.
Oh, okay.
And that was when Tom Prince got second, and everybody else was in the final. It was Keith Sasaki, Ben Severson, Mike Stewart, J.P. Patterson, and Tom Prince, and then winning that event was probably one of my most memorable contest moments.
Why was that? Was it the way the sun was shining and the way you held your trophy? I mean, what was it that was so like magical about that day? Do you remember?
I don't know if it really wasn't the waves, because it was like 1 to 2 foot and onshore mush, but it was the amount of talent that was in that 6-man final. To beat all those guys in the same 30-minute final was it just made me feel like I'd finally done something proud.
Yeah.
Back up.
Well, that's good. Okay, I'm going to put this one up, and I'm sure it's kind of like Jordan has asked. The ghost of Ron McNadams, R.I.P., is listening to make sure nothing is named.
Talking about San Diego County. So.
Yeah. Well, that's how it is. Like, nowadays, I mean, here with the isolation, Coronado and Oceanside were open before, when they closed down all the other beaches. And that one video I posted of the beach out in Oceanside, the lifeguards were going by and trying to distance everybody. And then they closed it the next day, because it was the only beach. But I put secret spot. I didn't want people knowing, look, here's a video of a secret spot. And well, now I've told you, but anyway, all of them are open now. Oceanside's open now. We're having that luminescent wave, the plankton, shiny at night wave right now. So during the day, the water looks really bad. It looks
red.
Yeah, it's really dirty. Yeah, kind of brownish, reddish. Yeah. Okay, so let's take a couple more and then we'll cap it here. I'm sure you're probably getting hungry. The classic question: what would you rather ride each wave perfectly? Oh, this is a good question. Would you rather ride each wave perfectly or ride a perfect wave? Oh, That's a good one.
That is a good question.
Yeah. How about both?
You know, I think because writing each wave perfectly is probably an unrealistic thing to ever happen. I would say writing a perfect wave would probably something that I'd rather do, because it's almost impossible to ride each wave perfectly.
Yeah.
So I'd probably want to ride a perfect wave.
Yeah. Well, that's good. And that's a really good way to cap it too. I mean, I can't even believe we've been at it an hour now. We could go on for, if we were all together, we could go on for a whole weekend of memories. It's such amazing times that we've had together. Is there anything you want to talk about as far as the future goes? How you're going to be around for quite a while now. How would you like to see everything go with the sport?
Well, I think it's really important for people to get involved in the promotion of the sport if you've got the time and the energy and the resources to do it. I'm going to continue to help Ben and Chris Burkhardt and Jeff Hubbard and everyone involved here in Hawaii in regards to promoting the sport and getting the keiki, getting the children out there. I'd like to do more amateur events. I think we kind of have to get back to our roots.
Yeah.
Almost jamboree type style contests where we've got a beginner division and we get out there and everyone just goes out to have fun. And that's the way we got to bring our sport back. Yeah. So just being involved in the sport behind the scenes is important for me. And to make sure that if I'm involved in the judging panel, that the right people are getting through the heats. That's super important to me. Yeah. Yep. And it really hits one of my heartstrings to make sure that I get that right. So yeah. And that was part of the BIA too. We felt like if you're going to come down here and pay the money, the person that goes up for number one was the real winner. And we never had any disputes. Do you remember? Oh no, the judge was looking the other way. I mean, there was never a dispute. And that's really a quality that if you pass on, that for the sport will be really, really vital, I think. I'm sorry I missed the name here, but I thought it was a good question. Why do you think the bodyboarding took such a big dip? Do you think it's because of losing all those youngsters and heading more towards the pro and not going back to the basic, lift them up through the generations? I think that's a part of it, but I think it comes back to the stigma of the boogie board and that it's a beginning wave riding vehicle that it's had for years and years and years. And it's an easy thing to do, but it's an extremely difficult thing to do excellent. So I think that's what's keeping it down and creating these dips in the sport is that it is extremely difficult to do at the world class level. It takes an incredible amount of time, energy, and talent to do to bodyboard at the top level. Whereas in people that surf and boogie board can attest to this. It's a lot easier to be a really good surfer than it is to be a really good boogie boarder. It's just the way it is. I mean, the surfboard is so refined and it's made just that much better to ride the types of waves that they're doing professionally than it is what we can do on a boogie board and what we have to do it. It down. Yeah. We just need to continue to promote it at the lower levels and get these kids in there that have the talent to surf waves, and we can continue to grow that way. Well, I totally agree. I'm in 100% of agreement. And I think most of the people that have seen it, have its highs and lows and all that, realize that there's a missing link
And that missing link is those little 7, 8-year-old Groms. And it's so exciting to hear about what you're doing over in Hawaii with the classic, you know, the boogie board. Calling it boogie board classic is amazing. That's perfect, you know?
Yeah.
In fact, when I did BIM, Tom said, name it Boogie Board Magazine. Heck with this bodyboard stuff. I never forget Tom. He wanted to be a boogie board, you know? Well, after all, he invented the boogie board, and maybe he might have been right. Maybe that's where we went wrong. I don't know, but it's been a marvelous time. You know, you and like many of the other people that I pretty much started out with, Pat, I will never forget you. And I will never forget what you've done, you know, for the sport. And just all about you. I mean, and I read some of the comments people said about us doing this today, and there were some really kind things that people said about you, about your you've always just been the stoke. I mean, I don't ever remember you ever having a temper tantrum after a heat, or I mean, I didn't see it. You're always just the guy, you know, the main.
Oh no, I've had some.
I never saw it. And
jumped up and down and swore at the judges.
Oh, really? Okay.
My bad times, but
yeah.
I mean, you know, I think the passion that I have for the sport is still going strong, and I'm still a Grom at heart. I still get upset if I miss a good day of waves. You know, it's just like I'm not an easy person to live with, and JJ can attest to it. When I miss a good wave of surf, I am not a happy camper. I'm a Grom.
Oh yeah.
All the time.
Yeah. Well, there's some good comments coming through here. Thank you for, you know, just doing this. And we got off to a little technological 21st century rocky road start, but we figured it out. You know, bring you in on video and call in. I mean, we worked it out. So I mean, I really appreciate you going through all that with me. And you know, I started doing this about 12 years ago. I mean, my early videos were like this, where a lot of technical challenges, but I learn each time. So what we learned today was, let's go in and do a little teaser live to get the kinks out. How's that sound? And just do a little, hey, we're going to be here, you know, Tuesday night, and then we can test what we've got to do. So I'm learning too. An old lady learns as we go. That was really fun, Pat, as a legend. Thanks for answering all the questions and sharing your time. Absolutely.
Well, I enjoyed it. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Patty, for
thank you.
I've enjoyed this hour.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, and we will talk soon, and you know, just thank you once again for your time. And so
you're welcome.
And basically what I'd like to just say in closing is that I'm going to be doing this. You know, we're in isolation. I want to do this more. So if you know anyone that would like to get a hold of me, that would be great. And I would love to talk to you. We're, like I said, I've got some lineups coming up. We got the OGs, the Los Originales coming in. Tony Prince, Joe Evans with Scott Evans and Roger Waller. We've got some stories to tell on that one. And a lot of you people that are just getting involved with the sport, you're going to really enjoy what we have to say. So thank you once again for joining me on a Everything About Bodyboarding episode. I've got them now up on my bodyboarding on my website, which I'll post. And also we're up on YouTube. So everyone can see it everywhere. So thank you once again. And thank you for all your contributions. Really, really appreciate it. We'll see you all on the next episode.